Please join me in welcoming today's student speaker, Mr. George M. Fenton.
Well, good morning and welcome. They say that good speakers borrow and great speakers steal. So let me begin by stealing a few words from the Roman orator Cicero, who says that among those whose remarks carry conviction are children, drunkards, and those caught off guard. Now, I am prepared. I am sober, I promise. So if we are to believe Cicero, the force of my remarks this morning rests upon me convincing you that I am a child. To that end, I'd like to begin with a short story that begins with a 4 a.m. cab ride to Reagan National Airport. It was the last day of my first summer in Washington, D.C., and I had a flight home scheduled to take off at 5:30 the following morning. After an afternoon of forget-me-nots and fare-thee-wells with colleagues and classmates, the Georgetown Starbucks and my roommates helped me stay up through the night to pack and clean the apartment. Now, the cab was on time, got to the airport early, and my flight was canceled. The next available flight home left at 5:30 p.m., so I had 3 terrible airport meals and spent 13 sleepless hours in the terminal. When we boarded at last, I was exhausted. I found my seat, took a moment to reflect. It was my first summer living away from home. It was my first taste of professional life. It was my first real feeling that I was growing up. As I savored the memories, the flight attendant leaned into my row and gently asked, "Excuse me, son, you were seated in an emergency exit row. Are you over 15? Now, all I could think to do was nod yes, but I hope the look in my eyes told her something more like, "You just shattered my moment of triumph, thank you." Had this been all of 2 months later, I'd have replied, "Yes, I am over 15 and I'll have a Jack and Coke, please." So I trust you'll take me at my word when I tell you that it is an honor to address you, and there's an outstanding group of graduates before us. I thought of describing the achievements of the typical Boise State graduate, but it occurred to me that there is no such thing. C.S. Lewis writes of the importance of learning to appreciate goodness and intelligence generally, not just goodness and intelligence flavored and served to suit our own palates. The vitality of this university and this campus consists in the opportunity to do just that, to experience different perspectives. Boise State has students from in-state, out-of-state, and out-of-country. Students from high school, professional careers, and military service. Students from every academic discipline you could think of, and a few that you couldn't. Any raptor biologists in the house? No, okay. In part, each of us owes the quality of our education to each other, to this diversity. To the mathematicians, whose elegant language sharpens our thinking. To the philosophers, who remind us always to question and rarely to shave. To the student athletes, whose passion and creativity and competition inspire the same in the classroom. To the engineers, whose work daily improves our standards of living with technology that would have been unimaginable just years ago. To the entrepreneurs, whose willingness to risk their fortunes and reputations on ideas will form the backbone of the knowledge economy. To the psychologists, please just stop making accurate inferences about my deepest insecurities after 3 minutes of casual conversation. It makes me nervous. To the educators, whose true value is found not in salaries, but in the lasting differences made in the lives of students. To the accountants, who we can consider either as the keepers of the debits and credits, or as the cool-minded sheriffs of the Wild West of capitalism, and all of a sudden, it's sexy. To the biologists, whose understanding of life at the microscopic level is held by few, but brings advances in health and wellness that are visible to the eye and known to all. To the artists, whose work John F. Kennedy thank you, whose work John F. Kennedy said, far from being an interruption, a distraction in the life of a nation, is very close to the center of a nation's purpose in reminding us of the richness of our existence. To the journalists, whose task is as vital as ever before, at a time when the news media often divides rather than informs the public, when caricature of opponents has displaced dialogue with partners. Which brings us to the political scientists, whom we ask only to prove wrong. Author Larry Hardiman's explanation of the word politics as coming from the Greek poly for many and ticks for blood-sucking parasites. And to students in dozens of other fields, whose education will better not only their lives, but the lives of their communities. Though we've taken different paths here, and we've chosen different paths forward, we share something meaningful. Each of us knows struggle, and each of us knows that our struggles are unique to our experiences. We can't genuinely understand what the person sitting next to us has been through without having been through it ourselves. But we can understand the growth that each of us owes to our challenges. To the late night shifts and the early morning classes. To the people who told you you could not or should not be here. To the mornings when you woke up at 8:37 for 8:40 class, and you made it. To the C in organic chemistry that was more rewarding than any A before it. To the lecture when you found the courage to ask the stupid question and everybody else was glad that you did. To the difficult days when you had to balance being a good parent with being a good student. To the second job you took to make ends meet, and to the loans you took on faith that they would be worth it. To the nights when you had to skip watching Glee to finish and start your term paper on the Civil War. To the time when you struggled with one math problem for 3 hours, and to the moment when you figured it out. To the 3 a.m. conversations spent mending a relationship neither of you had time for. To the philosophy lectures when you almost wished with Stephen Colbert that if a tree did fall in the forest and no one was around to hear it, that it would land on your philosophy professor. To the evenings when you logged out of Facebook and opened a real book to find that it had more to offer than you had expected. To the finals weeks when the demands of your coursework devoured your time with reckless disregard for the formerly precious distinction between weekdays and weekends. So to the class of 2012, you have earned the commendation you received this morning. As we celebrate our graduation, we also recognize the role that faculty, friends, and family had played in getting us here. To begin with faculty, Boise State professors take a sincere interest in their fields of study and in our education. Your knowledge and your drive and ability to share it have shaped our ways of thinking. As for friends, your reminders to have fun, your late-night pick-me-ups, your uncomfortably sincere criticism when we needed it have kept us balanced. And family members of graduates, you are our most consistent sources of love and support. During times that we made you proud and times that we didn't, we could not be here without you. And as Mr. Terrell of the State Board reminded us with the Mercedes-Benz comment, you are also our most prolific donors. So to all of you here who share in our achievement, on behalf of the class of 2012, thank you. Now, as is custom, I'd like to offer a few words of advice. I had planned to share my thoughts only on the virtue of hard work and the places that it will get you. but my senior thesis defense a few weeks ago has changed some things. I spoke for about 20 minutes. I started taking questions from faculty, and the next thing I remember, the students had been ushered out of the classroom and Dr. Fenton was on the phone with the paramedics. I spent the rest of the afternoon in the emergency room with wires on my chest and was released on the condition that I stayed away from schoolwork for a few days. Now, I don't want to dramatize it as a near-death experience because it wasn't. I was overworked, under-rested, and I fainted. But it was enough of a scare to get me thinking about what's important. It was a poignant reminder that our time must be treasured because our time here is scarce. This in turn offers two lessons. The first is that work does matter, and time is not to be wasted. Finding a compelling career and providing for yourself and your loved ones ought to be among your priorities. And the accomplishments and excellence occasioned by your effort ought to be recognized. But the second is that work is far from everything, and life is not a race. As author Charles Whelan says, you will never see an obituary reading, "Bob Smith died yesterday at the age of 74. He finished life in 186th place." And as I've come to learn, your salary and your resume measure neither your worth nor your contentment. I believe you will find that the most rewarding experiences come not in outrunning people, but in helping them, in being of service. So whatever beautiful journey you're about to begin, I would encourage you to hold the well-being of your fellow travelers as dearly as you hold your own. Finally, now that I've taken more of your time than I was given, I have one thing to ask of you. It seems to me that we are always trying to fix each other and to fix ourselves. And to be sure, progress is good. You want to knock a few decimals off of your mile time or add a few to your GPA. You want to be a better student, a better sibling, a better parent, a better teacher, as you should. You want to meet expectations and take care of all those things you're responsible for and a few of them that you aren't. But this can go too far. It can go for too long without taking time to enjoy yourselves and your company as you are. So I'd ask that this morning be that time. This morning, I ask that you embrace imperfections and forget deadlines. Forget, if just for a moment, all the questions about whether or not what you've done is good enough or whether or not where you're going is right. And be at peace. Be proud of what you've achieved and celebrate. Thank you. To the class of 2012, congratulations and enjoy the ride.